All right then. So I'm pretty sure my audio is coming through now. Why don't we double check? Oops. Oh my god, did I seriously start without... I forgot I don't have my OBS all up. Well, would you look at that? I'm not starting a third time. You're just gonna listen to music for a while, alright? uh... It was Discord's fault. It was the fault of one of my tabs. It wasn't even my headphones. For some reason, like I was just in a Discord call. Also, Gallopade saw me in the call and texted like, I can see you streaming in the Discord because we just have a private channel in our Discord to stream in. And I shut down my computer and then suddenly my headphones were working. And then I joined Discord and the music went silent. So it must be Discord's fault somehow. So I didn't have to restart everything, but now everything's restarted. We can like cross our fingers and hope that the next scene looks correct. Perhaps it won't. But let's start this again. Well, you know what I'm actually gonna do is hum along and then check on YouTube. Well, you know what I'm actually gonna do. Alright. Hello, mousies. Let's try this again. So I had some audio problems. A number of them. I'll decide if I delete my stud of a stream. Not a stud is a good thing. Stub of a stream. Later or not, maybe not. But the part that also got cut off of that part of the stream was hello. I'm testing out some audio things for this because my last stream playing the Tinkerbell CS game, I don't have a mic stand, so I was just holding my microphone like cupped in my hands, and then like later in the stream it was actually just like resting on my tit, and it probably wasn't facing the right way. It's just round and it kind of rolls around when I try to put it on my desk. So looking back over the stream, I only tested like a couple sentences and I said those very clearly, very into the mic, but I didn't continue to do that. So you can't really tell what I'm saying. The background music was also a bit loud. Speaking of, this background music is also too loud. Which I'm just mixing digitally. Overall, my microphone input I would like to add some gain to. Because even when I have it like echo back at me, it's quite quiet. So and obviously I could have done all of this testing and such before stream, but I figured the people that are here like for this up and coming channel that's honest about the fact that they don't have it together, it's probably people that like want to start streaming themselves or are interested in the process, that sort of thing. So I figured, why wouldn't I do it on stream for other aspiring VTubers out there, etc. So my mic is actually like in a good place this time. You know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this intro before I've even like tested my audio, because I already know it's quite quiet. So you're like putting your device volume like up really high to be able to hear me right now if you are. But I'm going to mess with some things. So I'm going to turn down the music actually. And oh, and we're reading something today. Yes, that's the point of this stream, and it's important that you're able to hear me when you do that. So I'm just gonna put a little notice here. Audio testing hot. And the reason why I like cover my little dancing self is because it does freeze when it's not in focus for too long, as does my Fuji. So I'm gonna try just having like a couple of pixels of my Fuji showing, which hopefully like keeps it refreshing and showing up. because I'll have that here again. Now I wanted to actually show you my OBS screen, but OBS can't capture itself, and you have to have like 2 versions of OBS open, and that kind of ruins the point, because I feel like it'd be fun to listen to my audio in real time as I'm fixing it, you know. Very, very behind the scenes exclusive, I guess. That's the quality isn't there, so that has to be, doesn't it? Alright, so first thing I'd like to add is a compressor, which should also turn up my volume a bit. And you can't see this, so I'm just going to be describing it. It's the meatball menu, and then in filters, OBS has its own compressor. Well, actually, first I'm going to turn on monitoring of this, which in my last stream was when I realised. Oops, I muted myself. So when I realised that my audio wasn't on the entire time. Monitor and output. There we are, we have a little echo. And now we can see now you can hear me clicking. That's something that I'll probably noise gate or something. Even though it's kind of loud, so maybe you just get to see that. So first thing, let's see how this mic is. I think it does sound better in terms of like hearing my actual consonants and not just wow wow wow. With it where it is, I've got it like 6 or so inches away from my face and a bit to the left. I'm curious, like, is it directional? Yeah, it's a bit more quiet from this side. Now I'm talking into the back of it. And yeah, it's really quiet. And then here's this side. And then, okay, so I guessed correctly where the front is. It's opposite of the cable. I didn't really think about that. Because I've seen, like, their drawings of mics and, like, what they take in. I don't understand how that works. Because I think, like, aren't sound waves just sound waves? I don't really get how it's spatial unless you're like just facing a certain way. I don't get how there are those mics that can only hear something that's right next to them, but that is nice, and maybe this mic can do it. I got it from a friend because they got a nicer one and gave me their old one, which was very kind. Which is why I'm not used to it and I don't know anything about most things. So I actually already turned on the compressor with the default. So the ratio is the first thing, and that's sort of how much the large peaks are put down. This is a really high. Ah! Okay, and then this is low. Ah! That really didn't sound different. Okay, I'm gonna do that again. Ah! Ah! Okay, maybe it was a little bit quieter on that one. So yeah, I'll turn that all the way up. And the threshold. Oh, so that might have actually did nothing. I might have just convinced myself that it did. So like, if I lower the threshold. Ah! Ah! Oh, that was quiet. Quieter than when I said. I am just like squawking at my thing. So if I want a pretty low thresholds, I don't have like that much of a dynamic range. I just wanted to be a bit more even. Low attack. this because I want it to pretty much be always the same. And then I'm going to put on a bit of output gain because that should let me. Oh, this is nice. I don't have to talk as loudly. I'm actually very quiet and it's picking me up. That's quite nice. So I'm paying attention, especially to my consonants, because that's mainly what's hard to get to come across very nicely. I sound quite young when I'm talking this quietly, but it would be nice to. So even if I lean back, you're still hearing my nice consonants, and I think I'm pretty understandable. Cut me off a bit. Or maybe I just forgot to talk. It's a bit hard because I couldn't figure out how to put a delay on the echo that it's giving me right now to monitor it. So I need to think about talking. At the same time, I think about listening. And sometimes I forget, I think I did just forget. And it's entirely possible that I am sending both of these outputs to OBS, which I should probably stop because even if it was cute, the novelty I'm probably going to be like reading a bit. Like I'll do a couple of test sentences. I did figure out how to send OBS to Audacity. But I also sort of don't want to mess with things and my inputs and outputs right now because I just did a whole lot of messing with my inputs and outputs, and for some reason Discord broke my headphones because of it. But I'll do it now. It'd be better to tweak things now than like tweak them after I do this stream and read everything. Even though it is a book that I'm not as like precious about. Doing mostly things that I'm not too precious about, just for pre-debut as a whole. So the way that I can get stuff from OBS is I want my Audacity playback to be my headphones, and the recording device I have set to cable output. You can just like search like cable loopback, cable VB, cable output or something. It just lets me set one thing as just to cable, and then something else can take that cable as an input, and it will be taking the input of the other program. So then in my sound settings, the only time OBS's actual output matters, I believe, is, I started to plug in my mouse and then I didn't. The only time the output of OBS matters, I believe, is the playback. So then I can set the output device of OBS to cable. And now if I keep accidentally muting it. Now if I turn audio monitoring to Okay, if I turn on desktop audio, now you hear my echo. So I'm gonna just go shut up and then listen to my recording. Sounds a bit bad. Ignore that last bit. My voice is getting dry. Oh, my echo's on. That's what I sound like, huh? I speak very quickly. Yeah, this is. I'm learning things. Like, take a deep breath. And maybe I should speak. Maybe I should speak a little bit higher. I do find it a lot easier. I've always had a very high voice. When I'm singing, I can sing pretty much as high as I like, and I'm still fine. Um, and even when I lose my voice, I can still sing high. So I think the compressor sounds fine. I might turn down the gain a little bit because I think it is more than I need. And if it is like adding in some weirdness, then that can detract some weirdness. Maybe down the ratio and up the threshold just a bit because I went very intense. So we got side chain slash ducking sauce. I don't actually know what that means. So that's it's probably actually gonna start properly now, so better sound like something. I can just read the table of contents. I don't think I'm gonna read the table of contents. There's another little paragraph that I can read while I record it. As all the bees of the story are Italian bees, they all they all except one have Italian names, and they should really be spoken as the Italians speak them. Besides, they are prettier that way. Therefore, a list of them with the proper way to pronounce them is given here. And I should actually I am gonna read all these, but later. Let's hear how I sound first. Of course, I'm testing multiple variables at once, which you're not supposed to do, because I'm also just naturally hearing my own voice going, oh, I'm kind of like hitting fry a bit. I can talk a bit sweeter, I think. It'll be more comfortable. So I'm changing multiple things, not just like a little bit, but that means that it's harder to tell when what I'm doing is what I want. Well, I hope it is. Sounds. Yeah, of course. Okay. Oh, echo. I think I'm quite happy with it. I guess I'm practicing my streamer voice a bit here, which is going to come along as I'm reading. Really, the whole stream is going to be something I do and then I go back and listen to. I sound a bit young. I sort of like that my voice sounds more mature, but it is very sweet. I think it's rather listenable. I hope so. I hope it isn't too high. And then I'm gonna go lower to make sure it's not too high. A nice thing, I should keep drinking my water. Oh, I can see, I can see the little bar go up and down now when I'm doing different stuff. Can you hear me swallowing? Oh, you can hear the swallowing. Well, that's alright. I would like to play some music now that I'm actually getting down to it. I'm gonna get my Fuji to work again. And we'll actually start reading this. Well, first I'm gonna say like all the different names. I would have just pronounced them in Spanish, which is probably pretty similar to Italian, but make sure because there are consonants that are different. Where are we? Alright, I'm gonna just play them from my start stream. Lovely. Now, how do I feel about the volume of that? I had it on half before, which I think I should keep when it's meant to be in the background and I'm meant to be talking over it. Just a bit. It's too loud before. I'm thinking of my consonants and I'm thinking of keeping my voice very smooth so that I don't run out of it before the end. Because my mic can pick me up anyways, so I can be relaxed. And I'll make it through a little longer if I'm relaxed. It's been like 2 hours of me fiddling with the stream, doing a stream, and then messing it up, and then restarting, and then doing all of this. The time just goes on ahead, doesn't it? Now we get to actually read. Alright. Nuova, uno, due, tre. Well, I'm probably saying them more correctly, actually. Saggia. I don't really know what the apostrophe there means. Saggia. Mela. Sera, Cera, Bessa, Aria, Principessa, Principessa, Che, Principessa. I might not do it like that fancily when I'm reading. And Lotta. I probably won't set my R's just because it'll kind of break, but it'll be a bit fun. Well, we'll see. Now I'm listening to my nice playlist. And I'm feeling nice. And it's like midday. So I'm not falling asleep now, but I really could. Nueva. Chapter 1. Nueva appears. Nueva seemed to be gradually awakening. It would have seemed that way to anyone who could have seen her just at this moment, and it seemed that way to Nueva herself. It was just as if one were in a comfortable warm bed and began to be conscious of a faint light outside, and soft voices and other subdued sounds. The light and sounds grow stronger and louder until, with a start, one is already awake and sees that the light is the sunlight of a beautiful morning coming in at the curtained window, and recognizes the sounds to be those of a household already busy with a new day's work. It was, indeed, an awakening for Nueva, but it was more. It was the beginning of a new life for her. Until now she had been a sort of pollywog stage for a bee, a stage in which she had no legs nor wings, and in which she could do nothing for herself at all, not even as much as a pollywog can, and had lain all the time in a long, narrow, six-walled waxen cell that was bed and room all in one. That is, we might say, she had always been so far in her life been in bed. For when she was born in her cell, she was just a tiny white thing, without wings or legs, blind and quite helpless. Really about all she could do was to squirm in her little horizontal cell, and keep opening her mouth when she was hungry, to let someone know she must be fed. She was immediately taken care of, however, by the nurse bees who kept near the nursery cells all the time, except when they had to go to the pantry cells for more food for the babies. This food is flower nectar and pollen that had been brought to the hive by the active forager bees and stored in the pantry cells. The nurses made a sort of very good and nutritious jelly out of it, which made Nueva grow very fast. After she had been fed this way for 5 days, she was many times larger than she had been at first. At the end of this time, however, the nurse bees did what might seem, at first thought, a rather heartless thing. They made a thin cap or cover of wax over the open mouth of Nova's cell, thus shutting her tight in her bedroom. She was so large that she almost filled her cell, but there was still a little room left, and this the nurses filled just before putting the waxen cap on the cell, with pollen and nectar mixed. For a few days Nova lay quietly in the dark, sealed up cell, eating, when hungry, from the lump of pollen and nectar which lay by her side. And then she stopped eating and simply lay there in a sort of trance for several days more. To Nueva herself, all her life in the cell, from first day to last, must have seemed little more than a sort of dream, a confused dream of not being able to walk or fly, or see or hear, but only to squirm a little, and be hungry, and then be fed, and to feel dimly strange growing pains from rapidly growing legs and wings when they began to come, and of always being rather comfortably warm and sleepy. But the sleeping time had come to an end now. This helpless pollywog stage was finished for Nueva, and the light she saw through the big eyes that had grown out of her head during the last few days in the shut-up cell was the faint but real light of a new day filtering its way through the crowded hive, and the sounds she heard by means of the many little hearing organs on the long, delicate, sensitive feelers, or antennae, that had also grown out near her eyes, and were connected by fine nerves with her brain, were the humming and murmuring of thousands of industrious bees of the hive, who were already at work at their various duties all around her. Nueva's awakening, then, was much more than the mere waking up after a night's sleeping. It was the waking from a life of doing nothing but lying in bed and sleeping and eating and growing, to a life of taking care of oneself and helping to take care of others. It was the waking from a baby life to a real bee life. For Nueva was now a fully grown bee, with all the wonderful body and all the wonderful instincts and the high intelligence that we know bees to have, but she was still shut up in a nursery cell. However, to escape from it was not difficult. She could see the faint light coming strongest through the capped end of the cell. The waxen cap was the thinnest part of the walls of her room, and as Nueva's head was already lying close to the cap, it was simple and easy matter for her to begin biting it away with the two strong little trowel-like teeth. In a few moments she had made a little hole in the cap, and the light and sounds came in suddenly much brighter and louder than before, although the light was really not bright at all, nor the sounds loud, as we reckon such things. For the inside of a honey-bee's house, the hive, is always pretty dark, and the sounds bees make are not all that loud, except occasionally when the things are especially exciting, and all the bees are buzzing together at once, or when a princess is about to come from her nursery cell, and both she and the old queen do a lot of extraordinary trumpeting. But to Nueva, biting her way out through the thin wax cap of her cell, having never heard nor seen anything at all her baby life, things seemed very bright and noisy indeed. This, however, instead of frightening her, made her only the more anxious to get out and be a part of this exciting world around her, and so she worked away as fast as she could, until suddenly the hole was large enough for her to crawl out. This she did, feeling, as we may imagine, rather strange at using her new legs for the first time, and finding her new wings all folded up and rather damp and heavy. But out she came, and, with a long breath or two, she started to walk over the uneven surface of the waxen comb in which her nursery cell was situated. But only after a few steps she felt tired and limp. Indeed, she was limp, for all the outer part of her body, that was later to be firm and strong, was still rather soft and damp and weak. Her legs could not hold her up well yet, and her unexercised muscles needed a little practice to work together just right. So she soon stopped, trembling all over from her unwonted exertion, and let her big eyes gradually take in the strange sight about her. We did a chapter! Whoa! I talk really fast. My voice is going a bit faster than my brain to read enough, but I think it's plenty fast, so I, multiple times I felt myself getting too fast and then going, hey, let's relax, let's slow down, I talk so quickly, that I can relax, and then maybe I'll stop skipping words, because I saw the words that I skipped, and I know that I skipped them, but I still did. To be completely honest, I don't read very much. I mainly read audiobooks, and I don't read many books because I read so many PDFs. Because I'm into philosophy, so I read a lot of nonfiction, and it's a lot of essays. It's not really anything narrative. It's all a bit confusing as well. Those take a long time to read. I've always been kind of slow at reading, so I'm a bit like getting exhausted from doing this, because I've always been a bit slow, just turning shapes into words, even though I can interpret the words quite quickly. I listen to audiobooks frequently on 4 times speed, which when people aren't used to them, they think it sounds quite odd. But I guess it's where I've put my skill points. because I do listen to so many audiobooks. So if I'm being honest, this is going to be the first book I'm going to read on paper. Except for Shakespeare plays, I do read Shakespeare plays, but those are a bit easier because they're scripts. I think since like my sophomore year of high school, and I'm 24, so that's a bit embarrassing. So if you're wondering why I'm starting with children's books, that's why. It's because I don't really read fiction very much, even though I would like to, and I really don't read print very often, which I'm pretty fine with audiobooks. I mean, it is the same thing, but I do feel that the fact that I'm not forced to read print as often anymore, I do want to keep up that skill because it is a bit important. You know, menus at restaurants, that kind of thing. So, here I am reading this. I've always liked reading aloud. I was excited to do it in school when I was little. And honestly, most of my reading aloud is the Bible. I was like being a reader at church. That was the main time it happened. I think you'll learn about me quite quickly. I just love being on stage. You know, I became a streamer, so there are some things that you could have assumed about me. Like how I love running my mouth, which I've already done for a bit, but we're only 6 pages in, so really that's not very far. And why don't we continue reading about our baby bee? Chapter 2. Nova's First Experiences. It was truly a remarkable sight. She found that she was part way up the vertical wall or comb of waxen cells, each of 6 sides and all lying horizontally in the wall. This wall of cells towered far above her, even to the very roof of the hive, and below it stretched away down to the floor. Facing it towered another similar wall of cells, and there were built but little more space between the two than was needed for the free movement of scores, aye, even hundreds of bees that were clambering about over opposite faces of the walls. In each wall, some of the cells were open and some capped over. In the open ones were either baby bees lying on their stomachs with their heads near the opening of the cells, and their mouths opening and shutting in a most comical way, or there was some pollen or honey, or there was nothing at all. The cells with babies in them were those in the middle part of the wall, while around these were food cells. Near the open nursery cells were many capped ones, and Nova saw that some of these caps were being gnawed through from the inside. She knew what that meant. She had just been doing that herself. But also near the open and half-filled pollen and honey cells were other capped ones, as Nova guessed, and quite rightly, that these were filled and sealed up honey cells. The open pollen cells were pretty to look at because of the pollen in them was of different colours, yellow, orange, red, etc., and they made sort of uneven but attractive colour pattern on the face of the great vertical wall. Nova was a little dizzy at first with looking up and down the towering wall, and she had to hang on tightly to keep from falling. But she soon grew accustomed to the great heights above and below her, and even began to feel quite at home in her peculiar situation. A pang of hunger came to her as she saw a bee walk up to an open honey cell and take a long drink. She started to walk toward the same cell when she felt a tug at one of her wings, and heard an impatient voice, evidently addressing her. "Here, wait a minute. We haven't got you clean yet, and your wings aren't half dry. Don't be in a hurry." Nova was startled. Remember, it was the first bee talking, or any kind of talking, she had ever heard. Yet she understood it perfectly, and understood all at once, too, just what was going on. For as she turned her head to see who was speaking, she saw that 2 nurse bees were most industriously cleaning her body all over, and unfolding and smoothing out her wings, so that they would dry rapidly, and dry all properly spread out. Sometimes young bees do not get their wings properly spread before they dry, and then their wings are crumpled up and useless all through their lives. Nueva had, indeed, for some time rather vaguely, felt this gentle cleaning and wing-spreading operation going on, but at first she had felt so dizzy and faint, and then when she felt better, had become so intent on looking up and down the two great walls of wax, with their various cells and the many active bees moving about over them, that she had paid no attention to the gentle rubbing and pulling and stretching. Indeed, it was done so gently that unless she had started to walk away, or had accidentally looked around, she might not have known that it was going on at all. It was a performance much like that a just born kitten goes through at the hands, or rather tongue, of its mother. The pollen and honey put to her cell when it was capped had, of course, rather soiled Nova's body, and much of her hair was stuck together by it. So, like every young bee, just come from its nursery cell, she needed a good cleaning, and she was getting it. Without thinking twice about it, Nova did a very surprising thing. Or rather, it was not surprising for a bee to do, but it would have been if it was one of us, just born, as it were, and without any teaching or practice or chance of hearing anyone else first should do it. For we always call surprising in bees or other creatures what would be surprising in us, which is a rather silly way of judging things, but one we are all very much given to, as we think we are the most important kind of creatures on earth, as certainly we are to ourselves. We think our ways of doing things are the usual or normal or even best ways, and although the other ways are surprising. But we shall find, the more we learn about Nova, that bees have their own manner of life and ways of doing things, and one of the most important many differences between their ways and our ways is that they know so many things right off, without any learning or practice or imitating of others. They are born knowing how, they do not have to be taught. For example, the surprising thing that Nova did right away, without thinking twice about it, was to begin talking to the two nurse bees who were cleaning her. What Nova said, and what was said to her in return, is of no particular interest to us. It was simply commonplace talk, for Nova's coming out of her cell, and her first dizziness, the high walls of cells, the many bees moving about, and the spreading out of Nova's wings and cleaning her body, and even Nova's ability to understand things about her, to begin talking right away. All these were taken for granted in the hive as the most usual things in the world, which therefore needed no special exclaiming or talking about. In fact, Nova felt already that, as soon as she was properly clean and dry, she must join the other octave bees, who were all busy with different kinds of work they were doing, and begin to work herself. And she felt that she knew just what this first work for her should be. It should be the work of a nurse, and the nurse bees cleaning her seemed to take this for granted too, for none of them soon said, "I think you had better begin on the other side of the comb. There are enough of us on this side already." Nova looked up and down at the great comb, and then to the right and left. The nurse noted this and added, "You can get around by going either to the top or bottom, or to either end." Nova thanked her, and decided to crawl down to the bottom, for she could see, far down there, a number of bees moving about industriously cleaning the floor, and some others that stood still, apparently on their heads, and kept their wings buzzing like mad. She was not quite sure what this performance meant. And the floor cleaning, too, seemed a little curious. The fact is that, although bees do seem to know what is right off about things, they know these things one at a time, as it were. That is, when it is time for them to do a thing, they know pretty well, without any telling, how to do it. But they do not seem to know about other things at the same time. They seem to know only as the time comes for each special thing to be done. Nova seemed to know that she should begin working as a nurse, and to know how to do the work, for as soon as anyone started, she did just about as well as any of the nurses, But floor cleaning and standing on one's head and fanning one's wings like mad were not things she knew about yet. She worked her way carefully down to the bottom of the comb and found herself in a very busy place indeed. There was a free place under this comb, and under the one opposite to it as well. When she looked under the comb, which she had just walked down, she saw a great, low-ceilinged place stretching away in all directions, rather dim and getting darker the further away it extended, except in one direction. In this direction, however, it was lighter, and the further distance the lighter it was. From this lightest part, many bees were hurrying toward her, with great loads of vari-coloured pollen in their pollen baskets, or with their honey sacks filled to overflowing with fresh nectar. They hurried on, paying no attention to anyone, and disappeared one by climbing up and out of sight, except the few that climbed up the face of either of the combs that towered just over her. These bees she could still watch, and she could see that they carried their loads far up to the open food cells, into which they emptied the food they had brought. Also, she saw other bees, without loads, hurrying along the floor toward the light, and she had a wonderful thrill as she saw them, and something within her urged her to run with them toward the distant light, something inside her that sang of sunshine, blue sky, green grass and bushes, and many-hued fragrant flowers. But something else, even stronger, within her, told her not to go, that her work awaited her close at hand, that she must nurse bee-babies here in the dimly lighted hive. So she turned away from the alluring light, with only a glance at the floor cleaners and the silly bees on their heads, with their wings going like mad. So strong within her had grown the feeling that there was just one thing for her now, that she walked under the broad lower edge of the comb, from whose high wall she had descended, and came into the bottom of another high space, between two other towering walls of waxen cells. End of chapter 2. You know, I was worried, like, this is 100 years old, like, it's gonna have, like, outdated, like, views on, like, being alive and stuff. I might also just learn incorrect things about bees, because this is educational, but surely we've learned things about bees in the past 100 years. So I might be spreading, I might not be spreading misinformation in terms of, like, racism, but it might just be misinformation in terms of, like, we didn't know how bees worked back then. You know, much less inflammatory. It's not a death sentence, I think, to believe some incorrect things about bees, but maybe I should learn about bees now. For the sake of this. I'm gonna check how long I've been going on for. Because I might want to, like, listen over to a bit of my own stream. See how things are going. You know, I could also see if there's someone in chat. Shall we see? It's just me. It's been an hour, so this is just gonna be kind of a dead bit, because I'm gonna turn on this music. And then I'm gonna be quiet. Oh my god, my music hasn't been on the whole time. I should have done this sooner, at least after chapter 1. I just took after chapter for a while. I had music on before, but I still actually have my echo on. So, maybe I can fix that later. But that means it doesn't actually really matter to see how it sounds, because well, one of the things I was gonna check was my music. Anywho, I'm gonna go listen to my voice for a little bit to make sure I'm doing well. It does sound pretty nice. And, I did sort of realise, like, if I want to put this somewhere, I should probably not have music in the background. So now that I'm going with it, I suppose it's alright. And I don't sound too young, in my higher voice. I just kind of sound like wispy and sleepy, which is alright. Um, and I'm pretty understandable, which I'm happy about. Yep. Admittedly, I'm getting tired because it's also getting hotter in here, and my air conditioner is so loud I can't stream with my air conditioner on, so this might not be a super long stream. Maybe just another chapter or two. But the fact that I'm tired does mean that I'm working on my stamina. So that should be good. Oh, also my Fuji wasn't working the whole time. But now it has focus again, and I hope that if I have it, like a little bit of it showing, that should keep focus. So, now here we go. Chapter 3, Nova as a Nurse. When Nova had come into this new high space, she looked up and realized one of its side walls was simply the other side of the comb in which her nursery cell had been, while the other was that of another comb opposite it, just as she had seen that there were another comb opposite it. What? Wait, what? The power of 0 viewers in editing. Chapter 3, Nova as a Nurse. When Nova had come into this new high space, she looked up and realized that one of its side walls was simply the other side of the comb in which her nursery cell had been, while the other was that of another comb opposite it, just as she had seen that there was another comb opposite its other side. Nova, seeing that, that still didn't make sense. I don't know what that says. But I said it better, I guess. Nova, seeing this, easily understood that probably this was the arrangement all through the hive, and that the broad and long, low, free space running through the whole hive just above the floor was a space just underneath the lower edges of many great vertical combs standing side by side, which, of course, was true. Yeah, I'm giving me too many things to edit out. Right away, however, Nueva saw that, so maybe we don't make it through another chapter. Maybe 16 pages is enough. Right away, however, Nueva saw that one of the walls above her was incomplete. It did not reach along its whole length from the ceiling clear to the floor, but at one end, the end toward the lighter end of the hive, it came down but a little way from the ceiling. Clinging to this unfinished part of the wall was a great mass of bees, the upper ones hanging to the free edge of the wall, but the ones below clinging to them and to each other, thus forming a festoon or curtain of bees hanging down from the lower edge of the incomplete wall. Many bees in this living curtain were buzzing their wings violently, while others were quiet, with thin sheets of plates of some shining silver yellowish substance forming on the underside of their bodies. Beneath the lower edge of the bee curtain there was a broad free space, beyond which the vertical wall of another, more distant comb appeared. On the floor in this open space were gathered many bees, most of which appeared to be picking up little pieces of the shining silver yellowish substance that had broken off from the bees in the festoon above and fallen to the floor. As this open space was lighter than the space she had come from, Nova could see everything quite clearly here, and the activity of all the bees and their concentration on whatever they were doing impressed her very much. No one so much as spoke to her, no one spoke to anyone else, but everyone worked away for dear life. It made her feel that she must get to her own work just as soon as possible. She glanced up the part of the wall that was all finished, and saw toward its middle a group of nurse bees, and a lot of open and capped nursery cells. She could even see, sticking out of some of the open ones, the comical heads of the babies. Conical? Each with it, I think conical. She could even see, sticking out of some of the open ones, the conical heads of the babies, each with its mouth regularly opening and shutting. And then she heard a song, a gentle lullaby sort of song. It was the nurse bees singing as they worked. This is the song they sang. We watch beside the cradles when the bee babies sleep. We guard the shining pantries where the bee milk we keep. And when the countless tiny bee mouths open wide, we rush the drink and bee bread and drop them inside. Our bread's the daintiest morsel, a wee babe goodies. We need it of soft pollen and nectar flower sweet. When ends our busy bee day, the nurseries we write, then wash our countless bee mites and tuck them in tight. Just try to feed our family, and swiftly you'll see that never were these nurses so busy as we. So she started to climb up to them. Just as she had gone a little way up, however, her attention was called to a very active and apparently excited group of bees crowding about a very I'm glad I got through this song. Crowding about a very different sort of cell from the ones that made up all the rest of the... Okay, I can improvise music, but I actually can't read. I've decided that I'm making it through chapter 3. Just as she had gone a little way up, however, her attention was called to a very active and apparently excited group of bees crowding about a very different sort of cell from the ones that made up all the rest of the comb. This was 5 or 6 times as large as any of the others, and not 6-sided, but shaped something like a pear with its small end down. It did not lie horizontal in the comb, but vertical, or it nearly so, and had a rough, thick wall, and was open at its smaller lower end. Nova could not see what was in it, for she was already as high or higher than it was, and it was near the lower edge of the comb, its lower end, indeed, but being a little way above the floor. As she hesitated a moment, attracted by the sight of the strange cell and the many excited bees around it, most of whom were nurses, she heard a bee, hurrying away from the cell, say to another hurrying toward it, "How fast the princess is growing!" This did not enlighten Nova much, but the feeling inside of her was now so strong that she must begin work at once that she hurried up to the nursery cells, lying a little way above the curious large cell, without trying to find anything about it. Which shows again, of course, how different bees are from us. When Nova got to the nursery cells with the hungry babies, she went right to work. She seemed to know just what to do. To go to the pollen and honey cells and drink honey and eat pollen and swallow them, but not too far, and then wait a few minutes, and then give this food up again, all properly mixed, through her mouth right into the open mouths of the hungry babies. And she knew just what babies were ready to have their cells capped with wax, with a nice little lump of food stored inside first, of course, and how to call some bee with a pellet of wax in its mouth to do the capping. She understood at once that the She understood at once that the shining silver-yellowish plates on the bodies of the bees in the festoon at the edge of the comb were wax, and that the pieces being picked up by the other bees from the floor underneath the festoon were to be used for cupping cells, and for making new cells where the vertical wall of comb was still incomplete. All these things, and whatever other new ones came up in the next few days in connection with taking care of the babies, she seemed to understand right away, and indeed she seemed to know how to do all her work without having to reason about it, or to observe and draw conclusions, in fact, without even once really having to think about it at all. And because it was all so simple, so easy to comprehend, an extraordinary thing came to pass with Nova. That is, an extraordinary thing for a bee. The thing was that Nova got tired of her work. Yes, she got tired of it. Physically, which is not perhaps so extraordinary, for bees sometimes fall dead from being overtired physically. But she also got tired and impatient of the simplicity and monotony of what she was doing. She got, I suppose, we may fairly say, mentally and spiritually tired of it. Which happening marks Nova as a bee of a strange and rare kind. A bee that is, well, all I can say is, a bee that is different. Other bees, if they had known of it, would have called her a funny bee, or a peculiar bee, or perhaps something worse. Indeed, this something worse is just what she was soon called. For Nova, after a few days of the steady care of babies, one hot afternoon, the hive was so set in the garden that it was quite exposed to the sun. Nova, I say, one hot afternoon, stopped working, and crawled slowly down past the great pear-shaped cell, clear to the lower edge of the comb, and there she sat and simply did nothing. Pretty soon Uno, one of the nurse bees in Nova's group, who had already shown herself to have a rather spiteful nature, noticed that Nova was not working, was not, indeed, to be seen anywhere about the nurse cells. So she touched another nurse bee near her, named Dua, and her antennae so as named Dua, with her antennae so as to call her attention, and said in a low voice, "Where is Nova?" Dua looked around, not seeing Nova, said, "Why, where is she?" Then both bees touched a third nurse bee, named Tre, with their antenna. She turned her— oh, it's 1, 2, 3, of course it is. Stop getting distracted. With their antenna. She turned around and joined them. "What's the matter?" she said. Then looking at the group of nurses, she added, "Where is Nova?" "That's it," said Una and Dua together. "Where is Nova?" "She isn't here. She has stopped working." "Exactly," said Tre. I thought she would come to that. I've been noticing her lately. She doesn't seem to like to work." "Whoever heard of such a bee?" exclaimed Uno and Dua together. "Let us find her," said Tre. So all three started to move around over the comb looking for Nova. They made wider and wider journeys from the nursery cells until Uno, who had got down almost from the very bottom of the comb and was quite close to Nova, but had not yet seen her, heard a low voice murmuring, "I am so tired." Uno turned quickly and saw Nova. She was sitting with her head hanging down on her breast, and she looked very tired and dejected. But that aroused no sympathy in Uno, who, together with Dua and Tre, had taken a strong dislike to Nova, feeling in her, in some way, a rather different, even a rather superior sort of bee. Nova was so unusually pretty, for one thing, and she had such a lively interest in everything around her. Uno, Dua, and Tre, who were bees almost exactly like each other, and like most other bees, felt an instinctive malice toward her, probably based on a certain envy which they did not, however, even admit to themselves. Una quickly called Dua and Tre, and the three stared malevolently at Nova for a moment, and then said together, speaking loudly so that the other bees could hear, "Well, what it be? to stop work. Just think of it. Then Una leaned over her and called to her, lazy. And Dua stopped to her and said, loafer. And Trey came up on the other side of her and hissed. I'm going to make a Google search because I'm going to use an abundance of caution when I'm reading an old book and I see a word I don't know. Yeah, it's just a normal word. It also means something else in Arabic. Anywho, just in case. And Trey came up to her on the other side of her and hissed, shirk. Then all three, lifting their wings to strike poor Nuova, who had sat very still through all this, shrinking from the vicious bees, called out, we'll teach her. And then they began to strike her all over with their strong wings. It was going pretty badly with Nuova, when an old floor cleaner named Sadia, stepping up to the group, shouldered off the three angry nurse bees. Sadia had noticed at other times that Nuova went rather slowly back and forth between the nursery cells and the food cells, but she had a good heart and thought it was because Nuova was sick, perhaps, for bees often get ill just as we do. She spoke to Nuova rather sharply, but still in a kindly way. Nuova, what are you doing here? You mustn't stop. But I am so tired, replied poor Nuova. Thank you for driving them away, she added. Tired nonsense, said Sadia. That's nothing. Of course you are tired. We all are. But what difference does that make? Go back to the babies and keep on with your work. That is what they all say, cried Nuova, bitterly and half angry. Here I am, a full week out of my nursery cell, and I haven't had a bit of rest or fun yet. It is time I began to have some. Doesn't anyone ever rest or have a good time? Sadia was painfully surprised to hear Nuova talk in this manner. She began to fear that Nuova's tiredness was not just physical tiredness. She answered her, therefore, in a strongly reproving manner. Of course nobody rests, and of course everyone has a good time. Look at them all. And she waved an antenna toward the workers and the nursery cells. Don't you see what a good time they are having? It is having a good time to be always working for each other and for our children. But they aren't our children, Nuova broke in. Yours and mine, that is. Not anybody's but the Queen's children. She is the mother of them all, and she keeps on having more. And we have to take care of them all and all the time. They are our children, Sadia interrupted, speaking very positively and still more reprovingly. They are the children of the community, the children of the race. It is our race we are working for, the children of the race. Think of it. Nuova made a little face. Well, I am tired of the race and the race's children, she said. I want some children of my own. Old Sadia was dreadfully shocked by this, and she was terrified on Nuova's account for fear that some other bees might have caught her. It was, indeed, about as rebellious a thing a bee can say. Hush, child, said Sadia in a whisper. You mustn't say such things. You mustn't even think them. Other bees don't, and you must hurry back to your work before the others miss you. She held Nuova up and urged her to begin climbing up back to the nurse cells. If you are tired of taking care of the babies, you can do something else next week. You'll be old enough. How much longer is in this chapter? You'll be old enough then to make wax and build cells or help clean the hive. And then in another week you can go out and gather pollen and nectar from the flowers. But go back now to the babies. The other nurses are looking for you. She urged Nuova along again, and this time Nuova started up, but she went very reluctantly and slowly. No, she said, they pay no attention to me. Nobody but you pays any attention to me, except when I stop working. They never notice me when I am hard at work. Why, of course not. Why should you be noticed then? That is what we all do all the time. Just keep everlastingly at it. That is what makes the bees such a great people. There is something wrong about a bee that doesn't want to work all the time. You mustn't be different from the others. I am afraid you are sick. All the time she was saying this, Sagia was urging Rover along up the comb toward the nursery cells, and now they had quite reached the group of nurses. As Uno, Due, and Tre saw Rover again, they closed in around her so as to strike or pinch her. But Sagia kept them off, and Rover slipped into her place again in front of a hungry baby. End chapter 3. 28 pages really isn't that much. But that's enough reading for me. Let's see if, my Fuji... Yep. My Fuji froze again, but that was my fault. Because I didn't click on it. I check it in OBS, and then I switch to my book, and I need to switch to my Fuji, and then to my book, I believe, in order to get a Diggin' working. So, I was just straight up a PNG for most of this. Not even a GIF. But, here we are. I think that that's going to be where I wrap it up. The book has been quite cute so far. I like the illustrations. I found it through the illustrations and it's pretty cute so far. It reminds me a lot of other children's literature I've read. Even though if I do want this to be actually usable by anyone, there's lots of editing to do. I was kind of losing my stamina by the time I got to chapter 3. But that's alright. That's how you build up stamina. So it'd be good if I could get myself to talk for longer, get myself to think for longer. But I really want to turn on my air conditioner right now. So I'm gonna do that, and maybe later I'll have more audio stuff to work on if I have to have my air conditioner on at the same time when I stream, which will be a quite likely thing to happen. I may as well go ahead. I should go to my end stream for this. I do have one of those. And I can play a bit of outro because I miss hearing it. Well, my end stream audio doesn't work. We're gonna cheat a little bit. Well, I don't hear it. So we're gonna stare at each other. Goodbye, mousies.